From every strand on the line of your reel, to the rods, to the anglers, to the lures on the end of your hook, let's talk about those big bass here on Co-Angler's Corner with your hosts, Rob Welch and John Stoudinger.
Good evening, everybody. I'm John.
Hi, y'all are. Cajun Rob here hanging out with you.
Adjust my screen a little bit. All right. So tonight we have someone who is very familiar with our podcast. This is, I think, third or fourth time on. He was the Northern Toyota Series Northern Co-Angler of the Year last year, Mr. Mike Mueller. He's going to be talking to us tonight about the free rig. It's something if you're into catfishing, smallmouth fishing, largemouth fishing, well, just fishing. It's another tool in the book. So let's bring him on.
Hey, guys.
Hey,
Mike. What's up, buddy?
I'm doing great. How are you guys doing?
Outstanding.
Good.
Yeah. Rob, did I let you? Yes, sir. Did I let you introduce yourself?
You know what?
Man needs no introduction.
Okay. Because as I'm talking, I'm thinking in my head, what did I say?
Yeah, you introduced me. You said something about winning Angler of the Year, or catching a bunch of bass, or doing something like that. So.
Yeah.
I get lucky every once in a while.
Hey, it's better to be lucky than skillful sometimes.
Hey. Pays the same.
That's
there
right.
You go. So, Mike, if you want to give us a quick rundown of who you are and
Absolutely. So, Mike Mueller, I've been fishing tournaments. My first tournament was back in 1987.
Wow.
So, I've been doing this a long time. I've been trying to learn something every year, move up through the ranks. I do mostly, I do boater stuff locally and regionally, but for these national tournaments, with my work and job, I just want to have the time to put in the week or two of practice that it takes to compete. So I hop in as a co-angler and try to, get a day or two of practice and figure out what's going on and try to catch fish behind some of the best guys out there. And I tell you what, man, it's one of the hardest things to do is to be a co-angler. You never know what you're doing, where you're going, how you're fishing. You got to pack for everything and hope that you packed right and try to get it all into 6 or 7 rods in one bag, and you get spoiled by being able to carry everything you own in your boat. But yeah, when you got to scale down as a co-angler, it really makes it tough.
Yes,
and especially these days, it's a different environment than it was even 5 or 7 years ago. So you really have to adapt and change on the fly and really figure out with today's new technology how to catch fish behind these guys. So I've been doing it a long time. I've been lucky enough to, have a lot of sponsors helping me out and a wife that's very accommodating for all the crazy stuff that I do and the time on the road and, a job that lets me get out every once in a while to do this.
Nice.
All right. So let's get into it. Let's get straight into the free rig.
Absolutely.
What is it?
So it was new to me until a year or so ago. I had heard about it, but I never really fished it. But it was kind of a secret up in the Northeast on the co-angler side. And I stumbled across a couple of guys that gave me some information on it and some pointers, and really still didn't connect with me until one of my good friends, Stephen Draghi. I drew him out in a tournament at Champlain. And he was fishing it, and then I didn't have any of the equipment, and he let me use his stuff, and we just had a crazy day. That was day 3. I had done really good the first 2 days. I think I was in like 11th place in the Toyota Series after 2 days, so I got to fish day 3. And man, it was just a different technique. It didn't take long to figure it out. But it's just a different presentation. Give them something different. It's so much of fishing is about that. Fish see the same thing day after day. So what presentation can you give them that's just a little bit different, a little unique? And I took what I learned from that tournament and really used it for the rest of the year. up north and even some down south, and it really was effective for me. So what it is, in its most simple form, let me get a little bit closer to the camera here. It's just, the way I rig it up, it's a 3/4 ounce free rig. It's a free sliding weight. Can you guys see that?
Yep.
I generally use smaller baits with this. So I've got a 3/0 Hayabusa hook and just a 3/4 ounce weight that just slides freely. So for me, where I see most success with this, because some people might say, well, why not drag a jig or why not have a Carolina rig or something? But I really like using this in the current, especially up in the Northeast, up on the river. I was just down in Gunnersville a couple of weeks ago using it down there. They had the gates open, so a lot of current. Because when you drag it, it's going to it has the weight nose down, so it's going to be pulling like a jig.
Right.
As you're pulling it down, the weight stays out of the way underneath it, and as you're pulling it, obviously it's going to have some erratic action. But for me, the key is two things. When they go to inhale it, if they're not getting the entire weight and everything else, they're just going to grab this on its own with no resistance, no anything. The weight's going to stay there, and this is just going to, get sucked in behind it. So they're not going to feel any of that resistance or anything that might turn them off to it. But secondly, more importantly for me, fishing in the current, with a Carolina rig, you've got to impart a lot of the action, and you're generally pulling it on a tight line, and then you can release it a little bit. But there's always going to be that little bit of resistance that they feel. But what I do with this in the current, I'll cast it out and I'll get it to the bottom and I'll drag it forward, then I'll stop and the weight will stay in place and the current will just take this and float it backwards, and then I'll yank on it again and it'll pull it forward and I'll stop and the current will take it backwards. I don't know how many fish I caught where it was just kind of freely suspending in the current back behind the weight, just letting the current take it. So those are my main techniques with it. I think it's important to use, a plastic that you're comfortable with. This happens to be a power bait that I was using. It's not made anymore. You kind of have to go searching on the internet for it. It's a Critter Hog, Maxent power bait Critter Hog. You can see it's got a lot of appendages and cool stuff on it. But I use that most places. I'm almost out of them, so I have to be very careful with it. But again, it's just a different look, and I think the real importance is, the role it plays in the current. Because even if you're not in current, you can, impart some action on it. But it's really, unless, you have a floating plastic with it, it's not going to pull away from the bait. But I think that's where the success is, where it kind of pulls away from the weight. And it kind of floats and acts freely, hence the name of the free rig is free sliding. It's going to act freely on its own and not have a lot of that resistance.
Nice. It's like a weightless, but you can cast it with a weight. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's kind of what it looks like. Now, from a setup and a technique standpoint, it really depends on how you're fishing, where you're fishing. For example, when I was fishing at Champlain, we were relatively shallow. I was using a 1/2 ounce weight. I think I was using only 12-pound line then, 12-pound CR fluorocarbon. And because it was 10 to 15 foot deep, you don't really need to muscle it. You don't need to, have super heavy line, super heavy weights to get it down. So I was using a 1/2 ounce with, 12-pound line and a 7-foot medium action rod. To me, from that setup in those conditions, that worked the best for me. But when I go up north, when I'm fishing up on the St. Lawrence, for example, when you're fishing 30 plus foot deep, up to 50 foot deep, with a lot stronger current, and all the zebra mussels and everything else that's down there, I'll go up to a 17-pound line, a 3/4 to a 1 ounce weight, and the weight's really simple. It's just your standard weight with an eye on it, that you can just
basically
thread through.
Yeah. The old
Yeah.
bull.
Yeah,
Well,
and a lot of people, those used to all be called like casting sinkers, made out of
Yep.
lead, stuff like that. But they fine tune these things. They make them out of tungsten, so it's super compact. To me, I think that's important. I've got Epic Baits that is my tungsten provider, and they have a good line of these. And a lot of these tungsten companies are getting very specific with the weights specifically for the free rig setup. But again, going out deeper, I'll go to that heavier line, especially with the mussels around if you're in a mussel lake, because not only are you 30 to 50 foot deep, you've got to worry about that heavy weight. You've got to worry about the heavy current, the zebra mussels, all that stuff. Then I'll go up to a 7'6" medium heavy. So you still can get that good casting distance, but you got enough backbone to set that hook in 30 to 50 foot of water on that low stretch, 17-pound fluorocarbon. So you really just have to pay attention to your conditions and your surroundings and how you want to, what you're comfortable using, and obviously try to use as light as you feel you can get away with. But there are certain times where you need to beef it up and be a little bit heavier. But yeah, I mean, it's a really interesting technique. It took me a while to kind of figure it out and to get the feel for it. But really, it's just truly something a little bit different that the fish haven't seen, how it's presented. And you can use any of your soft plastics on it, creature baits, you can use lizards, you can use, the minnow baits, any type of craw, speed craws, stuff like that. I know are real popular up in the Northeast. But even some minnow type, impersonations that you can get away with and have those floating behind in the current as you're pulling that ahead. But I think that's really just up to the person and the confidence, and obviously trying to match the forage and stuff like that. But I've just had really good success fine tuning that and with those setups. And honestly, if it was funny because when I drew out Steven and he told me what we were doing, I literally was starting to go through my box and see what I had. I'd never thrown it before. So the night before, I'm on Google and YouTube doing research on free rigs because I'd heard about it. I knew about it, but I really didn't know about it. And the first place we went to at Champlain on that third day, it was just loaded with fish. The winner actually came out of there, Kyle Cordiana. He was on that same spot about 50 yards from us. It was a current related situation. And the fish were just loaded on this current break. And everybody around me, there's probably 5 or 6 boats there. I think everybody had limits before I even caught my first fish because it was my first time throwing it and I had no idea what I was doing. And I was getting frustrated and I didn't know what was happening. But, slowly I just started messing with the presentations. And to me, what I figured out is you're not just dragging it. It's dragging and stopping and then giving it that little bit of hesitation or the slow down to have it pull away from the weight. And once I started doing that and figuring that out, especially in that heavy current situation, that's when I started catching fish. I ended up easily 100 fish that day.
Wow.
And it was a crazy day. And everybody around us was catching them too. I think Steven was my boater. He had about 20 pounds. I had 18 something. Yeah, it was a pretty fun day. I think I moved up to 5th place. And the 2 days prior to that, I was just doing drop shots, which I'm sure could have worked.
Right.
But when your boater tells me, he's been loading the boat on this and he's offering to let me use, his tackle, his weights, his lures, because I had nothing. Generally, you don't say no to that when you're given that opportunity. So, basically, he handed it to me and said, here you go. I'm going to catch him. Figure it out. So
Pretty cool.
yeah. And yeah, he had a nice limit in about 10 minutes. And like I said, all the other boats around us were, the fish were just stacked in a specific spot. And it was pretty fun to fish. But it was a good learning experience for me having that many fish that were that active so I could figure it out, knowing that they were down there and then I just had to manipulate my presentation. So it gave me some confidence, and I took that through the rest of the year. Took it all the way through actually the last day of the season at Thousand Islands, where I was able to use it to put a pretty good sack on the last day, and I won the Angler of the Year by 1 point. So
Wow.
you never know, and I just kept it in my hands. I was committed to it. I was even on the first day behind a really good scoper, gentleman, that fishes on tour. He was actually named Scott Dobson, who's another friend of mine. And he was whacking them scoping, and I was just fan casting in the current with the free rig. And then I found a little vein as I was fan casting where I caught 5 fish on like 6 casts on the free rig. So again, it's a decent search bait too, that you can use as a co-angler out of the back of the boat to take it, especially if you guys scoping and you're not, over 100 foot of water, like sometimes you are. But if you can get on the bottom, there's fish around, you can definitely use that to scout the area and to pretty quickly use it as a search bait without the, I know a lot of guys love the Carolina rig. It's one of my least favorite things to throw just because it's so cumbersome and, having to wind up, with a 6 foot leader or 4 foot leader. So this gives you a lot of the benefits of a Carolina rig in a nice compact presentation that you can cast like a jig.
Exactly. And you got 1 knot instead of like 2 or 3 knots. So that's I like that better.
There's definitely an advantage to that. Now, what I did do, again, just whether it works or not, I put a bobber stopper right above the knot, because that's going to be bouncing up and down. And if that helps protect the knot a little bit, the equipment with the weights is pretty good. So I think that's just a mental thing with me.
Yep.
But, I didn't lose any, didn't have any break off. It's a really cool presentation. I'd love to go in a lot more detail with it, but it's as interesting of a technique it is and a little bit challenging to learn. It's real simple. It's just like, trying to explain someone how to Texas rig. You put the weight on, you put the hook on, you cast it out, and you work it back.
Nice.
I've done shows with you guys and some other, people on some, pretty specific technique stuff like spy baiting and stuff like that, where, you could do an hour and not even get into it. But, really the idea for me behind this show was just to, let people know that, number one, if it's out there, if you haven't heard about it, you need to look into it, but don't be intimidated by it. It's not anything that's super hard or crazy. And especially in the days with the co-anglers now of being behind guys that are, might be scoping in 20, 30 foot of water. It gives you another option to help put in your arsenal to catch fish behind guys that are scoping. So
Nice.
now I will say I've been in tournaments where it hasn't worked great. But that's going to happen with anything. So it's not magic, but it's definitely a different presentation, a different look. When everybody's throwing Carolina rigs and jigs and dragon stuff, you can give them something a little different.
Absolutely. Nice. And it's simple. I like simple.
Yeah, simple is good. All of us who know the pain and suffering of breaking off a drop shot or a Carolina rig and having to retie. I'm all about efficiency on the water. I love being super efficient and not wasting, 10 to 20 casts a day that I'm not taking because I'm retying a drop shot or retying a Carolina rig. This is, you thread a weight on there, you tie 1 knot to your hook, and you're ready to roll again.
Nice.
Keeps you in the action longer.
Yeah. We do have a comment. I want to get to that.
Sure.
Dave Raleigh says, hey, y'all, what's happening?
Hey,
Not
Dave.
too much. Just sitting here trying to be educated.
Just talking fishing.
Yep. That's all good. On your hook set, Mike, do you do a sweep set or you go up? Now, what's your best hook set on that?
No, it's a sweep hook set. For me, again, because I don't want to put, just because of how it's separated and it's kind of free flowing and they hit it, I don't want to rip them too hard. So, it's not like if I'm throwing a football jig or flipping where I'm just going to, try to set the hook and get them in the boat all in one motion, or frog fish. And I get pretty violent with my frog fishing hook sets. But not with this. This is more of a firm sweep. It's not like a jerk bait or a spy bait where you just kind of lean into them. I do put a little bit of pressure on it, but not nearly, enough that I'm going to, jeopardize putting too much shock on it and, maybe popping the knot or something like that.
I got you. Makes sense.
Nice.
Yeah, just because it's not it's a direct connection, but it's not a direct connection to the line tie like a jig would be, where you can give it a good solid hook set. It has that separation. So
I got you.
You use straight fluoro?
I do on those, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep, straight fluoro.
That's what I thought.
Yep, 10 up to generally up to 15 or 17. I try not to get any more than 15, but like I said, there are some situations where especially in that super deep water where obviously fluoro has low stretch and you want to have some abrasion resistant stuff, which, I'm wearing my Seaguar shirt coincidentally, but, they make some really good abrasion resistant lines, with minimal stretch that will help you out with those deep hook sets.
Okay. This is probably one of the most compact but educational podcasts we've had.
Yeah, it's I could fill it with a bunch of nonsense and stuff, but it's really and I'm happy to talk more about it or if people have any other questions. But it's really something that's super simple and it doesn't take much to do. It's really just having the right equipment, making sure you get the right weights to it, and then just having your confidence, your bait of choice. Now, I will say, it's not something I use super shallow. I know that some guys will throw a Carolina rig like 4 to 5 foot deep and do that. Generally, I'm looking at something that's 12, 15 foot all the way down, where I was catching them at the St. Lawrence last year in 50 and 60 foot of water on those 1 ounce weights. Because anybody that's been up there in the summertime and late in the summer know that those fish sit in those deep holes in the current breaks and they just wait for something to flow by. But yeah, I'm not saying you can't use it shallow. I just haven't really experimented with that. I think there's other things that work well. If I'm getting up that shallow, I'm probably going to be throwing a plastic stick bait or something like that, or a wacky stick bait to catch those fish.
Absolutely.
Nice.
Yes, and it's fitting because we got a lot of high water and current in this area right now. It seemed like for weeks now, so that's definitely something I'm going to try next weekend for sure.
Yeah, and some things to look for is I know a lot of the stuff probably where you're at is a lot of mud bottom and stuff. But I've been to Florida. I was throwing it at Kentucky Lake. I was throwing it down at Gunnersville, up north in the Northeast, and I've caught fish in all these places. But what I try to do out of the back of the boat, because generally you don't have a lot of electronics or the advantage that the guy in the front has.
Right.
But you can, they've got their side imaging on, or if you're asking for side imaging, you can see the hard spots. This thing definitely works better around the shell beds of Florida, the shell beds at Kentucky Lake. There's a lot of rocky veins up north, obviously. Gunnersville's got hard spots with the shell beds. So when I'm in the back of the boat, if I have to fan cast with no electronics, that's what I'll do. But if I can feel that it's a harder bottom, that's where I'm going to slow down and concentrate. Or better yet, if you got your side imaging on from your boater's unit, you can see those spots shine, those hard spots shine pretty good. And so now you not only do you kind of have an idea where they're at, but you've got a distance and you know how far out they are. And you can even find little rock piles too. But generally, like at Kentucky Lake where I was at, Gunnersville, and down in Florida late last year, or I guess that was last year, looking for the shell beds and the hard spots and working through those.
Okay.
Yep. And that tungsten, you can feel it. I imagine that tungsten, you have a better feel of the hard bottom too.
Yep, absolutely. And again, the low stretch mono, it's not as good as a feel of braid, but to me, braid is not a great application for this. Even though you let you feel the bottom a lot more. But I think it's critical to have that, that invisibility, I guess, that cloak of invisibility that that Seagar and the good fluorocarbons give you.
Absolutely.
All right.
Yeah.
Looks like that'd work good on like bedding fish. If you found some beds, like some bluegill beds, and set that down in there and let it, glide. I like that'd be pretty killer.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. You can definitely do that. Now, I think what would be interesting, and I haven't seen this yet, that with that free weight, if you drop that in the middle of a bluegill bed, they're going to actually take it and grab it by the tail and pull it away. So they're actually probably going to help you with some of that action of getting it off the bed, but then your weight is still there, so then you can slowly creep it back into the bed, and they might pull it away again. And then you see that happen, and then you're going to get a big old bass coming by and want to see what's happening.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Mike, do you have I know we got them bad here. Do you have cicadas out there? I got them roaring behind me. I mean, we've been loaded with cicadas, I guess, for the last 2 weeks. It's been crazy.
No, those things are evil. You can you can keep those to yourself. I've had to be a part of those a couple of times when I lived in the Midwest and up in the Northeast, and it's not fun.
No, and then we got 2 different kinds. I guess the ones that come out every 17 years and 4 years. Well, it's lined up now. Both of them are out this year, so you can just imagine.
Yep. Yeah, I had that in one place I lived, and I would have thought the fishing would have been a lot better.
Yep.
But it was kind of like a mayfly hatch up north. There's just so much food. It's so hard to get them to eat because they're just gorging themselves on the cicadas.
Yeah, bluegills having a field day. And I seen the craziest thing when I was at Cumberland at Memorial Day. There were some cicadas on a branch. This bluegill come out of the water and grabbed one, all the way out of the water and grabbed one. I was like, they must be pretty good, I guess. I don't know.
Well, why don't you try one and let us know? You can tell us on the next show how it tasted.
Well,
I know my neighbor's dogs and cats always chewing on them, and then they spit them out. So I don't know. So I'll let them have it.
While he's having one of them, we'll have a cookie.
Yeah. Hey, cicada cookie. There you go.
No.
Yeah, you let me know how it tastes.
Nah.
Chocolate chip cookie.
Oof. Be a little crunchy.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're destroying my car, my windshield. This is every day.
Nice.
Crazy. Yep. But talk about you had some good success on your tournaments as a co-angler at Toyotas lately. I mean, you think it's just experience on the water, or just everything kind of set up to your confidence base?
I wish I knew, and we're just not going to think too much about it and just keep doing what we're doing. But yeah, these, I've been doing this a long time, and I've had some pretty good sporadic success with the Toyota series, but these last 3 years or so, I've just really been getting dialed in. And I don't know why. It's truly a confidence thing. Obviously winning the Angler of the Year helped boost the confidence, last year, and of course helps with sponsors and all that other kind of stuff too. But just knowing that in one of the toughest fields when you're looking at the Northeast, out of the back of the boat, when you're going to get behind guys with the technology that's out there today, and you just have to really focus so hard on the fishing. And maybe that's part of it. Maybe that's just a relearning of the focus that you need to do. Because years ago, when you just burned a spinnerbait down the bank, or you're just flipping stuff, you really didn't have to think that hard. But now getting behind some of the technology, and especially mentally, when you're seeing guys catch 30 and 40 fish in front of you, and you're looking for just 5 bites, you really have to refocus and make sure your mental game is strong, and you can't let that affect you. And you have to be in the mindset that the fish are around you. You just got to figure out how to catch them. So maybe that has some correlation, with some of my recent success. And last year was great. The year before that, we had some solid finishes. I think I made 3 or 4, championship days in the last year and a half. Even this year, we're not going to talk about the first term of the year at Lake of the Ozarks, because I think 80 85% of the field blanked out of like 200 guys because it was the first week of March, and I was there for 3 days of practice, and there was ice everywhere, and the warmest water we found all week was only 36 degrees. So you can imagine they weren't biting well. But I tell you what, one fish, I think only 30 guys caught fish. I mean, they barely had enough to make the top 25 for the second day or for the third day. It was just super tough. And, 1 2-pounder would have put you, way up in the, top 10. That's how crazy it was. But yeah, outside of that, we've had some good tournaments. Kentucky Lake actually was really good to me at the first day. I wish it was a one-day Toyota Series. I was leading. I think I had 17 something after the first day, and I was leading the field. But then again, that's part of a co-angler. The first day I found something a little bit different off the shore. Again, using some techniques where the water had come up really quick and the guys were up beating the bank, and I was assuming, and luckily correctly assuming, that the water had come up so quick that the fish were still going to be on the old bank line. So while, my boaters were casting up shallow, I was casting out the back of the boat and, caught 17 pounds off the old shoreline. So that was good. But then you get a day 2 partner who wasn't on the same pattern. And, I ended up catching 1 3-pounder, I think, on day 2. And, day 3, I didn't catch anything, but that's just the nature of being the co-angler and having, the guy I was with on day 3 was great. He had 2 really strong limits, but they were in very small areas and the fish were just gone. He had fished them all out. And, he told me in the morning that he was afraid of that, but it was all he had. And he was hoping something replenished and it didn't. But that's just, that's what you.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And,
so
and he was honest with you.
Still, 25.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, that's.
Oh
good.
Yeah. Nothing's better than that. At least you know what you're in for. And, we caught a couple of shorts, but no keepers. But it was still a good day because every day you're out there, you have a chance to learn something. So.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I said, I think a lot of your success is keeping your head in the mental game and staying positive.
Oh, yeah.
So.
Yeah. And it's been that way my whole career because I know, especially in my business, you need to be very strong mentally.
Oh, yeah.
Dealing with some of the stuff that I do in my professional world. But even in the tournament world, I learned very early on, especially in super bad weather or super tough conditions or cold, half the field's checked out mentally already. So now I'm only competing against 100 guys instead of 200.
Yep.
And then can those 100 guys keep it up for 2 or 3 days in a row mentally? And so that's where, I'm not going to say I haven't spun out a few times because I have. But you got to regroup and you got to stay mentally strong and not let that stuff get to you, because that's when, if I feel myself getting that way, I know I'm not in a good place. You just got to step back and refocus and not let it get to you. And I've just been doing a lot better with that. And again, I think a lot of that's just to focus on the new way that we have to fish.
Well, absolutely. I mean, it's a new mental game. I think it's, like you said, even more mental it is now. I mean, and a good point about the rough weather. I think it was Rick Clunn said that a long time ago. Said you show up on a bad, cold, rainy, half the fields already took themselves out of the tournament. So, good point.
Yeah, and you can see it. I mean, you hear it on the dock. You hear the people complaining. I love that. Because to me, I prepare mentally and I prepare physically. You got to be in decent shape. You got to be able to keep warm. And, I've got a ton of different tricks and techniques to keep myself comfortable throughout the day, no matter how cold it is, where it never really affects me. Where I don't think a lot of guys, I mean, I'm sure some of them do, but, sometimes I go to an extreme when it comes to preparing for super cold events. Hey, and I always say the fish still got to eat. No matter how bad the condition is, they're still eating somewhere.
Oh yeah, somebody's going to catch them and somebody's going to win. Might as well be you. That's good saying.
Well, and the funny part about that Lake of the Ozark tournament, after I think the third day of practice, we had about an hour left and we weren't catching anything, so we came across a school of crappie. So I go, well, at least let's catch dinner. So we were, we were scoping these big crappie. We were catching some 10 to 12 inches. It was great. We had a great dinner. So I'm throwing a little 1-inch crappie jig, and ended up catching 3 bass out of that school of crappie. Those were the only 3 fish I saw all week. So of course that's what I was trying to do all week to replicate that. And,
Yep.
It did not work, but you learned something.
Yep.
That's
Absolutely. Yeah, and it's a good point about being the old shoreline. I was on Lake Cumberland one time, and I had a boater, and like the last hour, we figured that out, that the smallmouth was spawning on the old, and the lake was up 10 foot, but it was on the original shoreline, and we whacked them like the last hour. Like, man, we would have had that earlier, we'd have been in good shape. But we had fun.
It was definitely, the fish were all in 3 stages of the spawn. But we definitely had some post-spawn fish that we were catching. And I'm sure a couple that I caught were bedding fish that were out that, they're not going to say water comes up 4 feet overnight. So they're just going to stay there and do their thing and finish what they started.
Absolutely.
Nice.
And a lot of guys, I fish Kentucky Lake a ton, especially when I lived back in the Midwest. And as soon as that water comes up, that's just the magnet to get up into the flooded bushes. And anybody who knows Kentucky Lake, they know about the yellow flowers up on the bank that get flooded. And there were guys catching them out of that, but it just wasn't the right time. It was normally when it comes up, it comes up because the TVA raises it and lowers it. But this came up because of weather, and it was, a few weeks earlier than they would normally have it in the bushes. But when you go to Kentucky Lake and you see the water in the bushes, that's just your first thing, is to get up there and start flipping and chatterbaits through the flowers. And some guys found a couple, but it just wasn't that time of year yet.
I got you.
All right. Anything else, Rob?
Yeah, talking about the yellow flowers. Chickamauga has those. I went to a Toyota at Chickamauga, and they had the yellow flowers, and the partner was flipping. So I said, well, I'll just do my little spinnerbait in there. And I had something just whack it and run off with it. And I saw it by the boat. It was like a brown flash. I said, oh, man, smallmouth. It's a big flathead, like a 15-pound flathead. I'm like, I wanted to get my spinnerbait. So I took my pliers and got it off at the edge of the boat. I didn't want to get that slimy thing in his boat. So I got it off at the edge, got my bait back. So
yeah, those are definitely key for about 3 weeks out of the year at the right time, the right moon phase and the right water level where you can just kill them down there. And like I said, a couple of guys did, but for me, it just wasn't. I didn't feel in my gut, in my instincts, that was what we should have been doing. And sometimes you're right. Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes, they don't hit within, first 20, 30 minutes. You're like, well, it's not really on.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. And then we were at Gunnersville 2 weeks ago. That place is just amazing.
Oh, it is.
Had some really good practice. It was a shad spawn tournament. It was a deep crankbait tournament. It was a scoping tournament. It was a frog tournament. Basically pick what you wanted to do and you could catch them. Had a I don't want to say had a rough first day. I had a decent first day, but I only brought in 3 fish, which was frustrating to me because you had to get them on the first spot in that first 45 minutes of the shad spawn. And I got suckered into throwing a bait because the first fish I caught on it my second cast was a 4.5 pounder.
Nice.
And they were busting all over the place, but that was the only bite I had on it, where my boater was throwing swim baits and hair jigs.
Yep.
And caught 19 pounds in the first 30 minutes.
Jeez.
But I got in my head about, I'm seeing all these fish blow up. Of course, they're going to hit a spook because the first one didn't. It was a 4.5 pounder. And I'm like, I just need to get it in front of the right ones. And they were all over there, but I only had one dumb enough to hit it. So, I look back on that as something I should have done differently. But then the second day I had a decent limit. And I finished in the top third, so I got some decent points. I was doing that as a wild card to hopefully, kick out that 0 points at Lake of the Ozarks that I had, so I can still make the championship. So I got one more event at Lake of the Ozarks, and if the numbers hold true for the last several years of the wild card division, I'm going to need about a 50th place finish to get the points to make the championship. So. and that's going to be at Grand Lake in Oklahoma the first week in November.
Nice.
Which is another lake I'm very familiar with from years living in the Midwest. So hopefully I can make that.
Oh yeah, man, no doubt.
Yeah, I've made several, and it's always good to make the championship.
Oh, absolutely, man. It's a blast. It is.
I'm good to go.
Oh yeah, heard that. Now, if like I say, I know you got that the max scent bait. Is there another bait that's kind of close second that you use, maybe a worm or a stick bait or?
So there's a couple of things I like using the creature type baits, and I actually have here. Yeah, I was able to get a new sponsor this year. There's a gentleman, David Swenside. If anybody knows anything about fishing or lure development and the connection with the JDM stuff over in Japan, he's the master guru of all of that stuff. And I had worked with him in the past at another company. And then he brought me on to his new company he's working with. It's called Dran Crazy. They're out of Japan. And I don't know how well we can see these, but they've got some baits called the Derange. It's a creature bait. Let me see.
Yeah.
Now there's too much of a glare there. But you can see it's kind of a mix between like a rodent, a beaver, a craw type thing. It's got kind of all the elements of those built in. Yeah. So I've been toying with those as a trailer because it's short and compact, and it's got a lot of the appendages, and it's got the it's got the curly tails on it. I don't know if you guys can see that to give it a lot of action.
Nice.
So that's another. I've got a bunch of those. And they've got a ton of other things too. You can, if you want to just have a simple, swim bait, you can put, just like a regular, a 3 or a 4 inch swim bait on there. Really, it's just a confidence thing. For me, I've seen the success with something that's, compact. I haven't. I'm sure you could, but I haven't done like throwing a 10-inch power worm on the back of it or something like that. And I think down south that could work, like in Gunnersville on the big ledges. Those guys love throwing those big 10-inch plum worms and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
For me, this has really shined as a smallmouth technique where, I want a nice, solid, but compact bait that they're going to be able to, they're going to be able to eat and be attracted to, and not get too much bulk in the way of the hook set.
Nice, but that's some good tips, man. I'm definitely going to try that out. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. Again, I wish it was something big and magical that we could talk about, but I did want to really just cover some of the finer points of it, and in the setup, because as itself, it's pretty simple. It's just 3 components. The weight, the hook, and the lure. But there's a lot of different ways you can set it up based on the conditions. So,
right. I'm definitely a big subscriber to the KISS method. Keep it simple, stupid. So I'm definitely a big subscriber on that.
Yeah, especially when it catches the heck out of fish and it's something that they haven't seen before.
Absolutely. But yeah, that's definitely going to be a big player in co-angling, I see, in the very near future.
Yeah, and it has been, and they've kept it secret for a while, and I'm sure there's a couple of guys that if they heard me talking about it, they'd be yelling at me to shut up. But I'm not in the Northeast anymore, so I can give that secret away.
There you go.
But who knows? I'm sure I'll be back there someday catching those big smallies again.
There you go.
If you're fishing in the Northeast, I don't think it's a secret anyway.
Yeah. I was surprised though that how few people were using it. But what was interesting is that first day at Champlain that I was using it when I started to figure it out. And this just tells you how fishermen are and how they pay attention. I was lucky enough to have the camera boats with us because we were doing good. We got a lot of action shots of catching the fish and netting the fish. But there was one particular shot that MLF had. It was of me during a cast.
Yeah.
I'm casting it, and they got it framed in such a way that you could see that there was a lure there, but you had no idea what it was. I had 3 different people message me after that photo came out where they had zoomed up tight on it, and they're like, "I know what you're throwing." Yeah, so give them creativity for doing their research, and because I really wasn't talking much about it, about the lure itself. The technique was fine, but the lure itself, I was not really saying much about. But they were like, "Look at this picture. We know what you're throwing." And then one guy actually had a screenshot zoomed in on the bait. And then he was holding up like the package of what it actually was.
Oh, heck.
So you can't keep all the secrets. Everybody's going to have their ways of finding out. But, again, kudos to them for doing their homework and doing some research and doing that little extra bit to find out what we were doing to catch so many fish.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's funny, the Japanese get a lot of credit, but it started in like South Korea, didn't it? And it kind of merged over to Japan, I think, if I'm thinking correctly.
Yeah, and again, in Japan, they take a lot of stuff and they fine tune it even more. There's a lot of cool baits coming out of Japan, and a lot of stuff from Dran Crazy and ISM International, another company that I've paired with, to bring some of this JDM stuff over. And they have to. We think our stuff is high pressured here. You get out to Gunnersville and you see guys complaining that there's 4 guys on a ledge, throwing at a school of fish. If that was Japan, there'd be 50.
Wow.
It's just super high pressure. They've got to come up with the crazy, different, odd techniques to, and especially some of the finesse techniques to, entice the fish into biting, because it's just super, super high pressure over there. And they get really creative and they come up with some cool stuff. So.
Yeah, and their finishes and their paint and finishes is just unmatched. It's unreal.
Yeah, and that's where David really shines. David, I talked about earlier, with his R&D. He's a master when it comes to design and colors and all the patterns that he puts together, and just a lot of the concepts that he does. So I was actually using some of their stuff yesterday. I was out. I only had like 3 hours in the late afternoon to get out yesterday, and I went fishing. And I went to this new lake that I knew it was you catch frogfish out there. But instead of a traditional frog, I was using, let's see, where is it? So they've got this, it's almost a finesse type frog. It's called the Pulsar. Yeah. And I'll see if you guys can see it here. It's only maybe 1.5 inches and then another inch with the legs. And it's a single hook deal. But it's almost, what I would consider finesse frogging.
Yeah.
There's no rattle in it. It's got a nice belly weight, and it's got a really good realistic finish to it.
Wow.
But what's also cool is there's 2 things that they have built into it, because it's a single hook. So usually with a double hook, kind of the body and the legs hold it in place, but with a single hook, it can go anywhere. And what they did to counter that is they put a little, I don't know if you can see it, they put a little keeper in the plastic right there to hold the hook into place. And above that, they actually have a swivel. So if you wanted to add a blade or add a, like a Teckle boot spinner thing, to make it kind of a spinning frog, you can do that. One thing I'm going to start playing with is using that little connection to modify and put some rattles on it. So I can have that rattling yet not affecting the presentation or the body. Or sometimes you put the rattles inside the body and then you can't compress it because the rattles are in there, can't compress it as much. So I just started using this yesterday, and I caught a bunch of fish. I probably caught about 12 keepers on it yesterday in the 3.5 hours. And I don't know if I would have used a bigger frog if that would have done the same, but I started getting a lot of their equipment in from Japan, so I'm obviously doing my testing and learning some of these new techniques, and it definitely worked. So that was pretty neat.
Nice. That's a cool little frog for sure.
Yeah. Oh, I'll frog fish all day long.
Not me.
Oh, we talked about this, John. I told you what to do. I was actually thinking about you. I was thinking about you yesterday.
You're thinking about me saying, yeah, he's out here not catching any fish, and I could be home eating all his cookies.
I tell you what, you just got to have a little bit of patience. And I thought about what we were talking about when you say you try not to pay attention. But there was a bunch of probably 3 or 4 fish I caught yesterday just because I saw just a little bit of a nose up underneath the weeds. You know, they didn't blow up on it. They didn't do anything. It was just a little disturbance. And then I reeled it in, I threw it back there, and I just worked it in that area and caught him. So
wow.
John would have missed those fish.
I'd have missed them all anyway.
Yep.
Dave says, "What's up, guys?"
Dave,
We're just
there's
sitting here
Bob.
talking about fishing.
Yep.
He said he missed tonight's show and he was teaching Allison how to fish.
Hey, nice, man.
Well, that
Yeah,
is definitely important.
Yep.
Nothing
Yes.
wrong with that.
Yeah, you got to rewatch it, Dave. There's plenty of juice on here. You better get your notebook ready.
Yep.
Especially if
All
you
right,
plan on
Mike.
fishing up in the Northeast.
Yeah.
Oh, he doesn't fish in the Northeast at all. So let's let you give some jeepers, John. Let's let you have some time to talk about your sponsors and your support staff.
Oh no, sure, I appreciate that. Yeah, I am lucky enough to have a lot of companies that are on board with me that help me out with this every day. We already talked about, David bringing me on this year with Drain Crazy and ISM. A lot of cool stuff coming from them. One of the coolest things that I'm just starting to use, I just got this a couple of weeks ago. They've got some amazing swim baits, and I put a video out the other day. But this is just, again, talking about the finishes, the technology that they use, and this is a little 6-inch bluegill imitator, obviously, and just the colors and everything they do with this. It's really cool. So I'm looking forward to catching some fish on that. But I've got those guys. I've got Seaguar, obviously, Luz. I've been with Luz for probably going on 12 years now. They've got the new custom. They got the new custom pro out this year. I'm really happy with this. This has got the drag technology on here. The braking system is so good on this, and you can literally make a cast and not have to thumb it and not worry about backlashing. I've got their hyper mags. I've got the hyper mags in the spinning. I've got their BB 1 Pros. For me, they each have a specific situation where I use them in. But everything they got, I really love, and they've been great to me, and hopefully we're going to be continuing that relationship for a long time. Razor rods, I've been with Razor rods for a long time. I just recently, within the last year, the end of last year into this year, signed with 3 other companies. Jim Miller's got a great soft plastic company. I used to be with a company called Snack Daddy. They were really specialized for smallmouth in the Great Lakes, and they kind of retired and went out of business. And Jim kind of took up the reins for what they were doing. And it's called Hoosier Bait Company, and they just have a lot of cool stuff. So if you're a fan of Snack Daddy, you should definitely go check him out. He's got a lot of their molds and a lot of stuff that that he carried the torch after they retired. So the quality is still out there with Jim and his team. Epic signed on with Epic this year. Tungsten, they've got a whole line of weights. Mainly use them for the tungsten. They've got some really cool swim jigs. They've got some cool buzz baits, stuff like that. And then there's this one guy I know that kind of clued me into the Hayabusa hooks, which for me has been a game changer, because I thought I had good hooks until I got some samples of these and I tried them out for the first time. And I'm not a guy, I've never been a guy who's going to sign up for something just to say I have a sponsor. I always want to try it out first. I want to believe in it. I want to know that it works before I make any commitment at all to anything or to any company. And there's been plenty I've turned down where, it just wasn't the right fit, or the quality wasn't good, or it wasn't anything that I felt that I could, really strongly stand behind. But when I got these hooks, I didn't realize what sharp was until I these hooks. So they're pretty cool. A lot of my other longer time sponsors, Jewel Jigs, I've been with them probably 15 years. They make really great jigs, anything from, finesse jigs for the deep clear Lake of the Ozarks fishing to, They're smallmouth jigs. They got a peewee 5/8 football head, kind of a peewee jig. It's what it's called. It's great for smallmouth. Then they've got the big football jigs and flipping jigs. I love their 7/16 with 11/16 finesse flipping jigs. That's my number one flipping jig of all time. So they do a great job. Seagar, we already talked about. G2 Gemini, I've been with them probably 10 or 12 years. Mike Schnupp and the team, brought me on board. And anybody that needs a jersey, I move tons of jerseys every year. I can give some guys some really great discounts, and they've got great service and some of the fastest lead times out there. So side pot fishing is always fun. I think you guys have heard of that, right?
Yeah, I've got a couple checks with them.
Yeah, I've got a couple checks with them as well. It's a really cool concept. So many contingencies that are out there now for the fishermen, which is great. We love having the companies support us and offer these contingencies. But a lot of them you have to buy into it. You have to buy buy for the year. Spend $50 here, spend $30 here. Sign up for the contingency program. But this one is, it can be a per tournament deal. You don't have to sign up anything in addition. You put in your $100 and you can do it for one tournament. You can do it for 50 tournaments. There's no obligations, nothing you have to sign long term. And it's a really cool concept that Luke Schrader has. And he's a hammer in his own right. I saw he just got back from the All-American. I think he had a top 20 finish there. So he's doing okay on his own. And we've had some really good turnouts on the bass side. It's still not where, he wants it to be. And I'm surprised that a lot of guys don't, do this more, because all you have to do is be the top finisher out of who signed up. You don't have to be, some of them you sign up for it ahead of time and you pay the annual fees, but it's only good if you're in first place, or if it's only good if you're in the top 10. Heck, there was one tournament last year, I think I finished 50th, and I was like the top guy out of the 4 or 5 other guys that signed up, and took home a check for like $500 or $600. And I made more than the last place check guy did just in the tournament. So I'd look at that. Go to sidepotfishing.com. They basically cover every single tournament that's out there. They just really had some great success with some walleye tournaments up north. I think they had like 30 to 40 boats signed up.
Nice.
Tournament, I think, was up in Wisconsin, which was really cool to see. Then you can get some really good payouts then when you get that many guys involved. So
and now they're elites. I noticed they've got some guys that's jumped on an elite side, and that's perfect. I mean, perfect. What's going on there?
Yep, absolutely. And again, that's just these guys are looking for any advantage when it comes to the financial side, and they can put up a little bit of money up front and get another big check at the end, even if they don't finish high. To me, it's a no-brainer. So sign up for all of them. I just missed out at Guntersville. Some guy stole my money. He took it from me. That should have been mine. But no, good for them. And I definitely consider looking into that if you guys are fishing tournaments. And they cover, anything. Basically any tournament series that's out there, from the BFLs all the way up to the Elite Series.
Absolutely. And talking about that, I think I finished 77th at a BFL regional. And I think it was Rusty Odom called me on the way home, and I finished 77th. And he says, "Hey, congrats." I'm like, "For what?" He said, "You won the side pot." So I won side pot, and I was 77th. So.
Yeah. No, nothing wrong with that. Yeah, I've done that a few times. So
yeah,
I'm never going to be afraid to try to win some extra money.
Exactly.
No.
Yeah. So again, I've got a lot of great companies out there. I try to work hard for them, and they support me. I don't take any of that ever for granted. I know they don't have to have me on board, and I never take that lightly when somebody's, allowing me to represent them and to help them move their product and help their company. So I take that pretty seriously.
Yeah. And Dave Archibald Fishing says the only way to be, only rep them if you believe in them.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I learned that lesson years ago. I was there was a big company, a bait company that I was the national staff director for. And we probably had 50 guys on the team, and I was managing all of them. And I don't know how many emails or letters or phone calls that I would get. Hey, send me your free stuff and I'll represent you. And to me, that was just an instant turnoff. And I would say, well, tell me about the company. Yep. Well, I don't know anything about it, but if you send me your stuff, I'll learn all I need to learn, and then I'll represent you. So I'm like, and you try to explain it to people that, that's not the best approach. And, to me, how can I sign you on and have you represent me if I just asked you a question about the company and you don't even know what it is that we do or what technology we use or how we differentiate from somebody else? I want somebody knowing that ahead of time, and that's how I try to present myself as well. And sometimes that's why I turn companies down. I'm lucky enough that I'm at a point in my career where, I have companies calling me, which is great, and then I'll call some companies too if I truly believe in something, and use it. And, even to this day, if I'm reaching out to a company, it's because I've used it already and I know about it, and I feel that it's strong enough to represent. And it's not always a yes. Sometimes they say that they don't have any spots, and that's fine. But again, you can't truly sell it if it's something that you don't believe in, because that people can read through that fake stuff pretty easily.
Absolutely. I've seen some that's come out, and one of their questions when you try to sign up pro staff says, "Have you used our product?" It's like one of the first questions.
Yeah, you would think you wouldn't have to do that. But again, the game has changed. It's a lot different, especially the sponsor world, than when I got into it years ago. And, it's just a lot different. And you just have to adjust and evolve with the business.
Absolutely.
Exactly. All right, Mike. We actually made this last over an hour.
Yeah.
Well, talking to me for an hour isn't that exciting. Ask my wife.
And talking about late to the party, there's Mr. May.
Hello, Jeremy.
Hello, Jeremy.
All right. Well, we'll let you go, and thank you for coming on talking about the free rig. And
no, I appreciate it. If anybody's out there, they have any questions or want to reach out and talk to me about that or anything else, you can find me on the Facebook pages, on the Instagram. Not that hard to find. I've got a ton of followers out there, and I appreciate every one of them. And we'll always take more, of course, because I'm about building this industry, and ever since I can remember, I never had anybody to be my mentor or to teach. My first, as I was growing up and in my younger days, and I ended up connecting in my later on in life with some mentors that really put me in the right direction. And I love sharing the knowledge and, giving people, stuff that I didn't have when I was younger in terms of, knowledge and being able to answer questions and, just to be there to help people out. It's all about growing the sport, growing the future. We all know that. Some of us are in our later years of the career, and some of the kids are just starting. I love talking to high school kids. Yeah. I'm just glad I can still get up every day and go fishing.
Amen.
Jeremy wants to know if you're from Virginia.
I have spent time in Virginia. I lived there for, I think, 3 years, but I'm not from Virginia. But I've caught plenty of bass in Virginia. Probably one of the best bass fishing states for largemouth that I ever lived in. And for smallmouth, quite frankly, because the Shenandoah River runs through there. And I got to fish that a lot. And that is just an incredible fishery for both largemouth and smallmouth, and apparently big muskie out there too. But yeah, my career, for those of you who don't know, I run casinos. I've been in the casino business for 32 years now. And
wow,
I get to move about every 2 or 3 years all over the country. And I've lived, everywhere, which is great for me because, I'm not one for staying in one place anyway. But it allows me to, fish all over the country and learn different lakes. And I think that's part of my success too, is I don't have a home lake. There's no place that I go to, make me feel like a hero, because anybody can catch them on their home lake. I've never had a home lake. I'm always on the move and everywhere. Even the stuff I'm learning here, I'm in Nebraska now, and I'm learning these lakes around here. And, a year from now or 2 years, 6 months, whenever it's going to be, I'm going to pick up and leave and go somewhere else. I'm going to have to learn all those lakes. And that really helps you as a tournament angler traveling across the country, because you have no idea where you're going to go or what techniques you're going to use. And I feel pretty confident that they can put any lake on the schedule right now, and I would not have any issues finding fish or catching fish on it, because I've had to do it, fishing a frog in a foot of water, or fishing table rock 100 foot deep with jigging spoons. It's all, I've got no problem doing any of it.
Cool.
And, Jeremy says one of the Virginia Elite 70 sponsors is Mueller Builders.
Oh.
No, that's not me, but I like the name, and I think they should consider sponsoring me.
There you go. Hey, there you go. Direct tie-in. There you go.
There you go. All right, buddy. Well, hey, thank you very much for coming on. Appreciate it.
Of course.
For those of you who came late, no mentioning David and Jeremy, you can catch the replay on our YouTube channel at Co-Anglers Corner.
Yep. And good luck, man. I'm gonna go see you on the Toyota Championship. So good luck on the rest of your season, man. I know you'll make that championship. We'll get to watch you on the stage.
All right, I plan on it. That's the goal every year, guys. I appreciate it, and thank you for your time, and thanks for what you do for the industry.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, buddy.
All right.
Have a good, Mike.
Bye-bye.
All right. All right. Good show, man. Dang, Jeremy and David, you have to catch replay, man. You missed a lot of juice.
At least watch the first hour and 5 minutes of it.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Good point. Good point.
Yeah. Tomorrow we got I can't remember.
We're both old, man.
We got a podcast. We got a podcast tomorrow, and we have one Saturday.
Yep.
Emily Freeman, fish biologist, going to school for fish biology or something like that. I can't remember the exact name, but she's going to be coming on and talking about bass habits and behavior.
Absolutely. We all learn more about that.
Yeah, that's going to be a series that we're going to have on once a month. And she's going to be talking about behavior. And hopefully we can all learn something off of that to help us catch more fish.
Nice. And I'm like the newscasters. Tonight's wardrobe provided by Clay Dara Foundation.
There you go. All right. Appreciate you, brother.
All right. Hey, well, thanks everybody tuning in and subscribing and give us a like. So hope y'all stay tuned in for tomorrow, Thursday, and Saturday. So appreciate y'all, and y'all have a good night.
All right. Bye-bye.